continued. We are continuing. This is happening.
And we're back.
It's happening. It is happening. Here we go. Start. Hey everyone. Welcome to the Shrink Think podcast. I'm Aaron, and this is Nathan, and we are two licensed therapists continuing the conversation from the previous episode, which I thought was really fascinating, about should you use AI, I guess, in therapy or alongside therapy, instead of therapy. And we asked lots of questions and gave you lots of information about some of the background for AI and the context of it and some of the ethical issues maybe that are coming with it, some things to think about before you consider using AI. But intentionally, we did not really make a position because we don't really have one. It's up to you guys to decide. But so ultimately, we asked the question and then just left it.
Very annoyingly.
It wasn't really a mic drop. It was really just a careful set down. Poop. There it is, like just softly. And today we're going to continue that conversation. Not should you use AI, but it's kind of going off of the assumption if you've made a decision that this is something that you can do and you've got a good motivation for it and it can be helpful, how should you use AI in therapy, alongside therapy? And I'm going to kind of scratch off, not like a scratch off, lottery ticket, but like cross out the idea that should you use AI instead of therapy? No, absolutely not. So this is more of how should you use it to help therapy, not to replace therapy. Because AI is never going to take the place of another human being. AI is really based off of the idea that it's only doing what you tell it to do and what you give it to do. Therapy, on the other hand, is sitting across from an actual human being who knows what it is like to have the human experience. The human across from you has all the data already about what it means to be human, have thoughts, is growing up and in relationships that shape and form a worldview and interpretations and reactions. And so it knows the human experience firsthand, whereas an AI is just going off of what you tell it. It can know a lot of those things, but it does not have body sensations. It can know about those things based on inputs you give it or other people have given it, but it's not the same. And furthermore, when you're sitting across from somebody in therapy, the person can see you and know some of your blind spots in a way that AI isn't doing and cannot do, because you haven't given it those inputs and it's not sitting across from you, right? It's just words on a page or a screen or whatever. So we're kind of starting with the assumption that it should not replace therapy and can never replace therapy. So we're starting from this baseline of, well, how can you use it to help, to supplement, to improve your current therapy so that you're not just having essentially a therapist sitting across from you, which is, obviously very helpful. We're in this field because we're good at what we do. We have a lot of training. But also, it's kind of like using this as homework, as like books and videos or trainings or groups, research out there that you can know things about your condition or about yourself so that you can self-reflect and gain more information about yourself so that you can bring it to your therapist and grow together.
Yeah, there is a spectrum of people that are on all sides of this. Some people are going to think, oh yeah, I'm speaking of this because you may be one of these folks. They're like, oh yeah, you totally can. I don't know, and maybe I just reject your premise that you could totally use it instead of. We're not talking about that because you will lose that argument. You absolutely cannot replace therapy with AI. It just can't happen. And some of what Aaron just said is also true, but how you interact with it proves the point, because you are actually wanting a feedback on your human experience from a non-human. That's just what's happening. So the question is, how do you use a non-human to interact with you about your human experience.
Yeah, maybe one way of articulating this is the difference between informational knowledge and experiential knowledge. Human beings, by being human, have experiential knowledge, which is far different than informational knowledge, which is what AI has about the human experience. So it's the difference between knowing about someone and actually being in a relationship with them and knowing them.
Right. So as you're interacting with that, it's like, okay, some of this is kind of needing to know what you need to know, right? Which sometimes you don't actually know that. It's kind of funny because, like, as Aaron was talking earlier about the blind spot scenario, it may be as simple as you get an answer to something. Like, for example, you ask the question to AI, how many people struggle with XYZ, whatever that is. And you find out, like, oh, mackerel, 82% actually struggle with this. Well, one of the techniques that counselors use is called normalization. So we will often, at different times, say things like, well, you know what you're going through, like, and I've said it on the podcast before, the way it's like you broke your leg. And you're saying to the person, like, wow, it's very normal to have that kind of pain, and they're like, you're saying that my leg is supposed to be in pain?
My broken leg is
like,
normal?
Yeah, like, no.
Is it supposed to be broken? No.
No, we're not. But the way that feels is normal because of your condition, right? And normalization in therapy by clinicians can be overused. It can be used to where the person, and I have done that, by the way. I've overused it. I get
over-normalized.
Yeah, over-normal. And they're like, well, are you saying, like, I guess I'm just my life should suck.
Yeah, it's normal to feel ashamed of yourself at this point.
I do. I feel totally ashamed of you. I'm just kidding. Welcome to AI. Just kidding. So anyway, the idea of normalization is also one of those things, and I would argue that some of that's what you're going to get from AI is like to figure out that type of thing, which can be a game changer if that's what you need.
Yeah. So okay, how can you use AI? One of the ways you can do it is for normalization. You can get some information about your condition or information about whatever you have going on, whether it's a mental health condition, like tell me more about what anxiety looks like, or what's the pattern of depression. Or I use this a lot in my trauma work for how does this affect people's nervous systems, or attachment work in relationships, in terms of attachment styles, which we've talked about on this podcast. In fact, just this morning I was talking with a client about certain kind of avoidant attachment patterns, and how and I've done some research on using AI with this, of like what's sort of a typical attachment process look like, and a nervous system response look like for this. And so you can get information to kind of have a better understanding of, like, oh yeah, that kind of describes me, and that's how I operate. So it can give you information about yourself so that you have some knowledge maybe of like what direction to go in. So this is another one of those ways that you could use AI to maybe hone in on what exactly is my issue, or what's the nature of my condition or my struggle, what's maybe the pattern or the process that people with this go through. Again, it's not necessarily telling you about you specifically, but you can find like the category that you might fall into, so that you can better get help for yourself, whether it's find more resources in that specific area, or even bring this to your therapist of like, oh, I was researching this, and I guess I realized that I think I have more of a disorganized attachment pattern, because I have some of these things that go on, and I guess I just didn't even realize that. Well, that's helpful for your therapist to know, and for you to know, because the treatment for disorganized is going to be different than for anxious or avoidant, right? So all it's doing is like giving you more information about your condition, so that you can take the next step and get better help for yourself.
And the other component here that is kind of an unknown factor that meaning unknown to the user, but in that situation, is there's a point at where knowledge is actually a problem. So meaning, like, it's not about, you don't actually need to know. Some people will, like, for example, somebody has a situation, an event, somebody gets hurt, and they go to the hospital, and then you find out about it. like as a person, and you're like, you're sitting there going, man, I don't know if it's even like worth it for me to go down there. I just need to know more about that. Well, actually, your loved ones just need you there. You actually don't need to know more about that. That can stop you from doing something. The other side of it is, when you think that you understand something, oftentimes what happens is it works as a disconnect to other human beings, who then will say to you like, oh, you're arrogant, or you think you know everything, or whatever. And then you're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think that I know everything. And they're like, I experience you as a turd, basically, all the time. So knowledge is not helping you, which then creates more anxiety, that you've got more anxiety to deal with whatever's going on in whatever situation you're in. And it's not solving it. But then you think, I just need to know more, so I'll ask. So my point is, with all that and creating some weird goofy loop, is to some extent, you may not even really know what's going on, and actually the knowledge you're gaining it couldn't be making it worse.
And so this is, I'll just kind of put this out there again, not to beat a dead horse here, but this is why a human being is better than AI, because if you're in my therapy office and you're continually asking for more knowledge, as a human being, I'm going to say, Nathan, it's really interesting. Every time we come to these points, or every time something like this pops up, you're like, I need to know more. What is it that you think information is giving you? Is it giving you a sense of security, or are you afraid? And then you're like, okay, I need to find peace or control through knowledge. A human being is going to see those patterns and then reflect that back to you. Again, with AI, it's not going to do that unless you specifically know to tell it to do that. So this is where, okay, I'm going to move out of some of the dangers or the limitations of AI, because this episode is really about how to use AI. I want to be really strategic here. So these are one of the things, and you said this in the previous episode, AI is really about the prompts that you give it. It's about the information that you're inputting into it. So the more information you're giving it and how you're telling it to be and to respond, the better it can be. So if you're telling it, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of information, and I would like for you to analyze my patterns of what I'm saying. I'm going to kind of journal here, or I'm going to just share all my thoughts or whatever my experience is, and I want you to track my patterns and be honest with me and direct with me, not sparing any of my feelings or just trying to normalize, but I want to know the truth about myself, even if it's hard to hear, or even if it's something I'm not going to like. Say it anyway. These kinds of inputs are really helpful, because then it might actually be looking in ways or in places that it didn't really know to look because you hadn't told it to look there. So maybe then you give it some information, and maybe you've used AI a bunch before, and every time you're like, give me some more information about this, give me more information about that. And then you ask it this question, it's like, well, Nathan, I've noticed that every time, something comes up, you lean on gathering more information, which is a common blah, 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 blah. Like, that could actually be helpful. And it's not that it's finding a blind spot like a human can do, but it's just tracking something that it wasn't able to track before because you didn't tell it to look in that direction. But that can be really helpful, because you might be able to see some patterns about yourself that you might not otherwise see.
One way to use AI would be to, like, a prompt you could use would be going to it and saying, I am going to process where and when to go to therapy, and how to use therapy when I get there. And
this was easy.
And they'll just go, just click www.shrinkthink.com.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Great question, Nathan. There's a resource out there called shrinkthink.com, and a podcast called the Shrink Think Podcast. You will find all the resources to bridge the gap between clients and therapists to help your therapeutic journey.
This has been a brief commercial. So you would say something like, give me feedback on what I should bring up with my therapist using this next set of raw data that I explained to you, right? So you then say whatever you're going to say, and honestly, you process as if maybe you were even going to therapy. Like, you say the stuff that really is on your mind.
And by the way, sometimes, like, because I do use AI, and sometimes when I do this, it'll give me a response that is like, when I read it, I'm like, no, I think you're kind of assuming something about me that's not true. And I'll have to give it more clarifying information, like, no, I'm not that anxious, or no, I don't have that severity of like symptoms or whatever. It's more like this. And it'll like adjust and respond. I'm like, oh, that's clarifying. It sounds more like you're this. So it's like the information you're giving it is going to take it down a rabbit hole and draw conclusions about you that might not be true unless you clarify that information.
Which means you have to be somewhat honest with yourself, right?
And careful, but honest. Yeah.
There's a section of you out there that'll be like, oh no, I'm more anxious than I thought. Like, no, it's in the rabbit hole.
You've given AI some information that it's like, oh, you fall into this category because you didn't give it some additional information. And this is where I guess another one of these how to use AI strategies would be, and I personally love this part of it, is tell it who and how you want it to be. So I just did this morning with one of my clients because she wasn't really sure about her issues and what that looks like. I'm like, I don't really understand it. I'd like more information. And we had been talking about AI previously, and so I said, like, would you be open to using this? And she was like, yeah, sure. So I created a prompt that was like, act as an expert psychologist in nervous system, in the nervous system, in attachment theory and emotion regulation, because this person wants to know more about their attachment, their nervous system, and emotion regulation. And so when that goes out there, it's like, awesome, like I can learn about myself, right? Through, if you're an expert in this and that's, what to look for, then there are going to be a specific set of questions that expert is going to ask. Or if you wanted to be like, sometimes for people that have, big existential issues, you can ask it to be a pastoral counselor of some kind, or a priest, function as my mentor or as my guide, somebody who is like spiritually grounded and, something like that. And now it's going to come from the vantage point of that style of person and ask you questions and guide you in that way. That is also another strategy if those are the things that you're needing.
Yes, it will come in that style of person. It's important because it'll probably be a blend, is my point, like of a bunch of different things. But when you do create your questions, you've got to be aware, like, that what you're getting, whatever feedback you're getting, you should then ask yourself, okay, was I assuming anything when I asked this question with the previous question? Because now it's assuming this, like it's now saying this.
And also ask yourself, is this true? Kind of like you would with a person. If I was going to say something to you, Nathan, and then you're going to spit something back, you're like, okay, so you're this kind of a person. I need to be asking myself, is that right? Is that accurate? Or is it not quite? Did you miss something? Is there something off about that? And then I need to correct you if, like, no, it's actually not so much that, it's more of this. Right?
Yeah, like, you get feedback, and your therapist says something like, well, I mean, it's obvious you're an alcoholic or whatever. You're probably going to be stuck, because in the one moment, nobody's maybe said that to you. And the second thing, you're going to be thinking, like, do I even trust this person? Like, what's their motive? Why are they telling me, oh yeah, you're a therapist, if I have one drink, then I'm an alcoholic, well, whatever, right? Like, so you're going to be skeptical. Yeah. You need to have that same skepticism when you are getting feedback from AI. You can't assume that it's totally right about you in that scenario. And this is why, again, going to a therapist is going to be more likely to give you back kind of a shared, the whole thing is a shared experience.
Right.
So we're heading for home here. I just looked at the clock. So part of this is get your question up front, right? So you'll say whatever that is, and then maybe I would suggest that you use it with the intention of, you add in there, like, assume I'm going to therapy. What is the best questions that I should ask based on the feedback that I'm telling you? So, because that's great. I mean, you could come in with stuff right off the bat. What's going to be interesting, I think, to you is that when you do your intake in therapy, you're going to get these other prompts and questions. You actually might be a little more proficient in answering those because you've gone through a process up front, actually really thinking it through. And don't assume you can go all the way to healed or healthy with an AI experience. I would say that the majority of the time that's going to be a no. That's not going to happen. We do need to just simply be with other people.
Right, because that being with is really kind of the healing agent. It's not just they told me to do this and I did it. Two last things that I think can be really helpful, ways that you could use AI in therapy, and it's kind of along the lines of like journaling and homework, that kind of thing. You could use AI as a bit of a journal, and one of my clients sent me an article that was about this, and it was essentially saying that AI has like a perfect memory. It can keep track of all of the things, which is scary, and also can be really helpful. So if you're using it as a journal, you can ask it to give you some question prompts to get at like what you're feeling and better understand what you're feeling. You can use it to track your symptoms. You would have to ask it to track your symptoms. I have this condition, maybe I'm bipolar, so ask me a series of questions every day that I can answer, and that way I can, and then maybe even give me like a summary table of my progress or of my moods over the last few weeks or whatever. You could use it for that, so that you can maybe journal and have a better awareness about what you're putting into your journal and a step back view of yourself. You can also use it as like hey, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling really depressed, or I'm feeling super anxious. Give me some strategies that I can use right now to help, calm down, or to help, feel better or whatever. I just did this last night. I was having like some pain in my right trap muscle. I don't know the full word for it. Trapezius. Yeah. I didn't want to get into the gymnastics realm, trap, whatever, trap. Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Artichoke?
No. And anyway, and it gave me a couple of stretches that I did those things, and then I was like, oh, that really helped. And today it's feeling a lot better. It's simple things like that might be really helpful that you could ask your therapist, but and they can give you some more strategies, but AI can be really helpful for that in the moment outside of therapy.
Generally speaking, big picture, screen time is creating anxiety and depression. So being with people is a big deal, and being with a therapist is healing.
Because it's co-regulation. Your nervous system, it responds to somebody else's nervous system. And when you're in therapy and the therapist has a calm, regulated nervous system, they can help you with your anxious or your activated nervous system to be more regulated and to calm down. A screen, an AI cannot do that.
All right, everybody. Have a great day.
What a good.
A calm, regulated, have a great day.
Exactly.
Have a great day. Hey, all you guys, have a great day.
This is really interesting. I mean, I'm trying to be cautious with AI in therapy, but also I just am seeing a lot of the value where I can create some questions, or happens probably a couple times a week where somebody's asking for some book recommendations or some resources, and so I can just put that in and create a list and narrow it down specifically to what the person is looking for, and then it can create a series of journal questions that they can keep track of. It just is such a great tool when you use it that way, I think.
My main thought about it is what you're saying. That's all great and really helpful. I think everything is changing so fast that the generations ahead that they're already messing around with is a whole different. That's where you get into. I feel like it's a conversation that could very easily swing to don't do it. Depending on how the powers that be end up getting this thing implemented and what goes out, because it's Jiminy Christmas.
Well, there's the, I gotta end this, but
Yeah.
there's the, like, yeah, those people and what they do with it, what direction that goes. And then there's on the individual level, kind of like what you're saying, like, what's your motivation for it? And, like, I can control my motivation for it, but I don't necessarily know that bigger one, and that's where the danger, I think, can come.
Yeah.
It's too many variables.